Well, on today's show, unfortunately, Matt Hancock appears to have been stung. Oh no! Migrant hotels are experiencing massive backlash, and Asda's expensive mistake could cost you. Let's begin. The article says that a hotel chain repeatedly voted the worst in the UK is dedicating many of its rooms to asylum seekers and raking in thousands of pounds of taxpayers' cash. Figures from the Home Office show nearly 400 hotels are now giving refuge to some 51,000 migrants instead of selling rooms to paying guests. Almost 1 in 10 of those asylum seekers are staying in some of the 10,000 rooms owned by the Britannia Hotel Group, The Sun on Sunday reports. In all, more than a quarter, 2,619 of the company's rooms are currently occupied by people who have made the journeys across the English Channel. And according to the investigation by the newspaper, 17 of the company's often iconic buildings have now been block booked on behalf of the government. Hotels in Nottingham, Blackpool, Stafford, Hale in Greater Manchester, Birmingham, Wolverhampton and in London are just some of the locations used for asylum seekers. Other hotel groups are doing the same include Novotel, I hope I pronounced that right, Mercure and the Holiday Inn. At present though, the British taxpayer is footing the bill for around £6.8 million a day for the hotel migrant scheme, which works out at around £117.64 a migrant according to The Sun. Both the Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, and the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, have pledged to end the use of hotels to house migrants with the new illegal immigration bill. The legislation will aim to remove those crossing the Channel from the UK and place them in holding countries such as Rwanda. And Peter Bone, Tory MP for Wellingborough, Northamptonshire, said, "We must stop this horrendous waste of money and get these economic migrants out of hotels and into camps or ships." Well, unfortunately, as Priti Patel often found out when she was Home Secretary, quite a lot of lefty lawyers seem to be standing in the way a lot of the time. And who knows, if Keir Starmer does get in the next election, I'm guessing that could probably put the whole thing back to the beginning again. And by their previous record and things like that, they'll probably be welcoming them with open arms, won't they? Because let's face it, quite a lot of lefty lawyers and people like them do seem to have a little bit of a problem understanding not everyone who does cross the Channel are actual genuine refugees. Because surely wouldn't they just have their families with them and, I don't know, not try and chuck their iPhones into the water or things like that? Although you would think, wouldn't you, that surely they aren't that silly and therefore must concede that there are almost certainly some people who are economic migrants and therefore they have no right to be in the UK, especially if they're coming from the safe country of France. Of course, who knows? Apparently the government is looking at a sort of similar situation to what Tony Abbott did, Australia's Prime Minister. And basically, if I remember rightly, what he said was anyone who does actually come to the country via this method will not actually be given asylum, which could be the only way of stopping all these illegal boat people. However, that may pose a problem for the actual genuine people out there. All 10 of them, I'm guessing. Although admittedly I could be wrong, but either way, surely one thing that is actually going to stand in Rishi's way of doing this is the ECHR, isn't it? The European Court of Human Rights. Which, to be honest, I would have thought we would have left during Brexit, but apparently not. So let's just say I'll believe it when I see it, Rishi. But I won't be holding my breath, especially considering the many strong talks from Priti Patel in the past. And yes, obviously, Suella Braverman probably is a bit more serious than Priti Patel, but she's still going to be facing the same problems as what Priti did, isn't she? Former Chancellor Kwasi Kwarteng and Matt Hancock, the ex-Health Secretary, asked to be paid £10,000 a day for consultancy work during an interview with a phony overseas company, with other Tory MPs also caught out. During a sting operation undertaken by the campaign group led for Donkeys, the ex-cabinet ministers were asked what they would expect to be paid to advise a firm in South Korea, which actually did not exist. Neither, of course, is accused of actual wrongdoing, with no rules barring MPs from seeking employment outside of Parliament. And a spokesman for Mr Hancock, who came third, of course, in I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here last year, later insisted that he acted entirely properly and criticised the illegal publication of a private conversation. During the course of the interview, conducted by a webcam, Mr Hancock is asked whether he had a daily rate during the online interview. Replied, "I do, yes, it's £10,000 sterling." The Conservative former Health Secretary, who was stripped of the party whip following the appearance in I'm a Celebrity, later said he had an hourly rate of around £1,500. Well, sounds like a bargain, doesn't it? Led by Donkeys said that he created a sham company called Homestrong Consultancy, setting up a website and paying for so-called fake virtual office in South Korean capital Seoul, I hope I said that right, It said after consulting a register of MPs' interests, it approached 20 MPs from different parties asking if they would join the phony firm's International Advisory Board. The group sold the company as one of the aims to expand the UK and Europe, asking any would-be advisors to attend pretend board meetings held in a mix of locations, including allegedly in South Korea. Out of those contacted, 5 are understood to have progressed to the online interview stage, including Mr. Hancock, and 4 Tories. Mr. Kwarteng, former Education Secretary, Sir Gavin Williamson, former Minister Stephen Howard, and wait for this, Sir Graham Brady, who apparently is, of course, head of the 1922 committee, which is, of course, an influential backbench body.
But I would do anything less than for about $10,000 a month.
Dollars or pounds?
Well, pounds sterling.
Sterling's okay. 10,000 pounds a month.
Yeah.
Okay. So we were wondering, do you have a daily rate at the moment?
I do. Yes, it's 10,000 sterling.
Hourly rate, maybe. I mean, do you have any number in mind that we were thinking?
Well, it around 1,500.
1,500?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hang on a minute, let me get this straight. Matt Hancock believes he can actually get paid £1,500 an hour. Surely I'm being gone on I'm a Celebrity has kind of got to his head a bit, isn't it? And it does make me wonder, if Matt Hancock does have an hourly rate, it does make me wonder if his, shall we say CCTV friend, also has an hourly rate of her own for who knows what. But either way, surely MPs, especially during the cost of living crisis, should have their mind on the job at all times. And yes, I know they are allowed to have second jobs, but you would think there'd be some sort of limit placed on that, wouldn't you? Because being an MP and therefore getting paid £80,000 plus per year should be their top priority of all, because let's face it, they're in the government, aren't they? And deciding the future of many people's lives, with what laws or bills or whatever they choose to vote on. And therefore they're expected to do their job properly, not just go on things like I'm a Celebrity, and therefore that's basically neglecting their job for a little while in my opinion. Apparently Labour have insisted that they will of course ban MPs from getting second jobs, although whether they will actually do that or not is another thing altogether. Because let's face it, quite often, especially with elections coming up in a year or so, all the basically major parties do seem to leak their potential manifesto promises early, don't they? It just makes me wonder what Labour's manifesto pledge would be for all these Labour voters, illegal boot people coming in from overseas. Because let's face it, they do seem to be on their side overall, rather than, in my opinion, thinking of the potential risk to our citizens. Because let's face it, quite often they do not only, as I said earlier, chuck their phones in the water quite a lot of the time, but also quite a lot of them don't have any identification documents, and therefore makes it harder to identify and see if they've actually got any criminal records or not. The article says an Asda shopper was gobsmacked to discover that his supermarket was going to set him back a whopping £617, and it was all down to a simple error. After finding a croissant reduced to 60p, the bargain hunter picked them up for his breakfast. But when the savvy shopper headed to the checkout, he noticed an error on his receipt, the Mirror reported. The man, who wished to remain anonymous for some reason, said he was lucky to double-check his receipt, or it could have been a costly mistake. He added, the member of staff and myself both saw the funny side of it though. Imagine if I hadn't noticed, they would have had to have been the best croissants in my life. And as the spokesperson said, the incorrect price was a complete anomaly. They added, we know our croissants are good, but we agree that £617 might be pushing it. This looks to have been a one-off caused by the smudged or damaged barcode that has been scanned incorrectly. And we've checked our other yellow sticker products in this store and not found any issues. Thankfully, this was spotted and rectified by a colleague immediately, and we hope that customers enjoy their croissants, knowing they actually only pay 60p for them in the end. And yes, of course, while it actually does sound quite funny, someone getting charged that amount, it could have actually ended up very different if he lost his receipt, for example, because surely that could actually lead to a stressful situation where not only would he have to remember what time he went to the shop or go and get a bank statement or whatever to prove the amount he paid in store or whatever so they could do a search within their systems, but he could also not notice for several days and therefore could have had lots of bills coming out in the meantime, of course. Because let's face it, quite a lot of people, myself included sometimes if I'm in a rush, just scan items and quickly do Apple Pay on their watch or whatever, just trusting the tills to be right without looking at their receipt. And yes, I know this probably would have never happened if it had gone to a man's checkout rather than a self-serve one. And also, if it had paid cash, because let's face it, if a checkout person or whoever asked you to pay £617 in cash, you'd have probably noticed them, wouldn't you? But of course, it is for this reason and things like this why it's always good to get receipts and keep receipts, regardless of all the eco-nuts everywhere saying, oh, it's paper, recycling, or, whatever. Although, let's face it, at the end of the day, Asda themselves are actually quite lucky, because if the guy hadn't noticed for a couple of days, and therefore it caused him to go overdrawn and get charged, surely he'd have been entitled to some sort of compensation. Because let's face it wasn't his fault that the thing was priced up incorrectly, was it? But, to be honest, Asda aren't the only supermarket that is making stupid mistakes, are they? Just like the one Sainsbury's is making in this video, which, to be honest, basically, in my opinion, insults every single one of its customers. Anyway, subscribe for more, and I'll see you in the next one.